The Japanese GP is right around the corner, and it seems like there's a massive shake-up waiting for us. For starters, the weather is about to cook something up for Sunday's race, which will mess up the team's strategy when it comes to the setups of the car. On top of that, there are two new outfits that we're going to see in Suzuka, with one of them being a return to the old nest, while the other is the promoted Yuki. And as the cherry on top, it seems like Ferrari is going to be a lot more competitive here because of the nature of the circuit, further posing a threat to McLaren's dominance ahead. With all this in mind, what are the storylines for Suzuka? Let's start with the weather and what is arguably the most important part of every race, the conditions on the circuit. We're not expecting big shake-ups during the free practice sessions and the qualifying as well, but on the other hand, the race is a different story. Reports suggest that there's a 50% chance that it will rain at the start of the race, while that percentage is much higher when it comes to the entirety of Sunday, 70%. This brings in huge value for the race, not just because of the masterclass that the drivers would have to pull during the wet tarmac, but also because of the car's setups. If we were to recall the Melbourne GP, we saw that in qualifying, many of the teams sacrificed their setup in the qualifying to prepare for a wet race. Although that didn't turn out in favour of Ferrari, it's still something that they're likely going to commit to here in Suzuka as well, given the fact that they have a lot of ground to cover after the double disqualification during the Chinese GP. It's going to be a hell of a mind game for the engineers behind the pit wall, and only one team can come out victorious from it. On the other hand, there is no doubt that the talking point of the entire weekend is of course going to be Yuki Tsunoda, the home hero that finally got the promotion he felt he deserved a long time ago. Although, of course, it did come in very strange circumstances, it's something that we didn't necessarily expect to happen quite so quickly, even though we did suggest that the Austrian team was going to think about a swap if Lawson's form continues to go in that downward trend. Yuki felt quite positive about the car's behaviour when testing it in a simulator, and what is even more important is that he aims for a podium finish in front of his home crowd. When talking about this, the newbie at Red Bull said, "I don't want to raise expectations too much, but I want to finish on the podium at this Japanese GP. It has all fallen into place, and now I'm standing here, and that is thanks to the support of everyone. The thing that I'm looking forward to most is that there couldn't be a more pressurized, challenging situation than this. It's also my debut with Red Bull, so with all these things added up, I think it's going to be an unbelievably exciting race. Everyone says the car is very responsive, and I got that impression too, but it didn't seem to act in a strange, tricky manner." This is the best news that Red Bull could have received from Tsunoda, especially regarding his feeling about the RB21. But the team knows better than to set their expectations too high, considering the fact that Lawson also felt extremely comfortable in a simulator before he actually sat in the car. Red Bull will help Tsunoda by making the setup less aggressive, which should help his performance a lot. But whether or not it will be enough to finally score points with the second car in 2025, time will tell. On the other hand, we have Liam Lawson, a man who was given very strange circumstances to show what he's capable of with Red Bull. Many would argue that he's been treated unfairly, especially being sacked ahead of his favourite race in Suzuka due to his vast experience with Super Formula here. But on the other hand, this will likely serve as a motivation for the Kiwi driver, and one of his closest accolades, Tony Quinn, has gone on to share a very powerful message ahead of the Japanese GP, elaborating on the expectations of the demoted driver in Red Bull. Quinn said that we should expect a masterclass regardless of the downbeat feeling that Liam currently has. He went on to elaborate, "I actually think the demotion will be good for him, carrying on from another event, and if it didn't work out well, it would be worse for him. Let's not give up hope on Liam. He definitely got the talent, he just needs to have a reboot, and once he gets on the road again, he'll be fine." Whether or not Red Bull will solve their issues with the drivers and give us the final verdict when it comes to the second RB21, Suzuka will tell. But one thing is for sure, the race at the top is going to get a lot more interesting as well. Even though Mercedes is perceived as the second force right now, judging by the first two races of the season, we cannot neglect the performance of Ferrari and the potential that their lineup currently has. In Suzuka, the team should hope for a very good result, primarily because of the nature of the track, full of medium and high-speed corners. On paper, these circuits suit the SF25 a lot more than what they did in the past, and that has been acknowledged by Leclerc. With only 2 slow corners throughout the entire circuit, the advantage of McLaren should be minimized, and if Ferrari manages to execute a perfect strategy, then they are in the mix for a double podium finish. When talking about the car's overall performance and how that will help them in Suzuka, Leclerc said, "Honestly, it's never really one thing. If we look at qualifying in Melbourne, the McLarens were very strong compared to us in the last sector, which could be about tyres maybe more than anything. But then if you're to look at the race, it's completely different, and it's just overall performance where we were just lacking speed, whether it's low or high speed or degradation. The high speed corners, I think we did a big step forward. Low and medium speed seem to be the area where we need to work on a little bit more for now." In order to improve its race performance, Ferrari developed a new simulator model of the SF25 based on the data gathered from the Chinese GP. This data revealed that the car performs a lot better with a lower fuel load and a lower ride height. And considering the fact that the team was unable to benefit on the long-run data during the Bahrain testing, they left a lot on the table to be picked up in the 2025 campaign. But what needs to be mentioned here is that McLaren will definitely not rest and wait to be caught in the mid-season development. The MCL 39 set a very high standard, and it looks like they are the team to beat in more or less every venue we go due to the wide operating window of the car. However, the drivers are not usually extracting the full potential out of the car, even though it came with 2 race wins in the first 2 events. Now that we have a serious contender in Ferrari, both Norris and Piastri would be smart to divide the strategy and to make sure that they are in the front 2 positions before they start a fierce battle between themselves. In Suzuka, there is a high expectation that these 2 young bulls are going to go against each other one more time, with the only difference being who is being chased and who is the chaser. Of course, we cannot predict that with certainty because the rain that we spoke about earlier in the video could mess up the plans of the Woking-based squad. But on the other hand, we've seen that they are performing extremely well under these conditions as well. The inch-team battle in McLaren is something that will raise a lot of questions as we move forward with the 2025 season, and it's worth adding that even a team of Mercedes caliber is now in the mix for race wins and podium finishes. Russell and Antonelli will have a lot to say ahead of this race, mostly because the team expects huge improvements in the following period when it comes to the performance of the WD16. There is no doubt that the Brit emerged as one of the most powerful drivers behind the McLarens, and whether or not they'll be able to pull a masterclass in Suzuka, time will tell. What is more than certain though is that we finally have a multi-team battle at the front, and with Ferrari and McLaren having 2 drivers who can be up there while Red Bull and Mercedes participate with only 1, who do you think will emerge victorious in Suzuka? And more importantly, how do you think the Lawson-Tsunoda swap is going to go down in the first race? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to check out the video that appears on your screen right now.